The arrow that missed death. The sky over planet Kivora was red, filled with the dust of war. Smoke rose from the burning trees. Strange flying beasts screamed in the air. On the ground, warriors in bone armor stood still. Their eyes were locked on one man. The man who stopped the arrow. Just 1 minute ago, Lyra, the best archer of the Fireclaw tribe, had taken her position on the sacred cliff. Her long black hair moved in the wind. Her sharp eyes saw the stranger walking into forbidden land. He was tall, calm, and wearing no armor. Just a black jacket and boots covered with travel dust. "This is sacred ground," Lyra shouted. The man looked up at her. His eyes were blue and quiet, like still water. He said nothing. "You were warned," Lyra whispered, pulling the bowstring. Her arrow was no ordinary arrow. It was made from bone and energy crystal, deadly and fast. She released it. The arrow flew like lightning, cutting through the wind. But then, something impossible happened. The man didn't move. He just raised his hand and caught the arrow. His fingers closed around it gently, like holding a falling feather. Silence fell over the warriors. No one had ever done this before. Lyra's mouth opened slightly in shock. She climbed down fast and walked straight to the man. Her tribe followed her, weapons ready, but no one attacked. They were too stunned. The stranger looked at Lyra, then slowly dropped the arrow on the ground. "You should not be here," she said, her voice low. "I was called," he replied. Lyra's heart beat faster. She didn't know why, but his voice made her feel something strange. Not fear, not anger, something else. The old tribe elder stepped forward. His face was marked with blue paint. His voice was serious. "By our tradition," he said, "if a warrior's arrow is stopped with bare hands, the warrior's fate is now tied to the one who stopped it." Lyra turned sharply. "No, that is just an old story. It is law," the elder replied. "You are now bonded to him." The crowd gasped. Warriors looked at each other in disbelief. Lyra's hands shook. She had trained all her life to never miss. And now, she was bound to a stranger, a human from the stars. "I don't even know his name," she whispered. "I am Rain," the man said. "Commander Rain of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. I mean no harm." Lyra looked at him. "Then why come to this land? Why risk death?" He looked at the sky for a moment. "Because something old is waking up, something that does not belong to your world, or mine." The elder stepped forward. He speaks of the ancient signal. That made Lyra's heart stop. The ancient signal was a myth, a tale told to children. A signal from the sky, calling for help. A warning. "I don't believe in old stories," she said, turning away. "But your arrow believed," the elder said. "And it missed death." The tribe made a circle around them. Lyra felt their eyes on her. She hated this. She hated losing control. "Fine," she said. "Let the bond stand. But I follow no man, especially not one who walks into fire without a reason." Rain gave a small nod. "Then walk beside me. That's all I ask." She didn't reply. She just picked up her arrow and placed it back in the quiver. The arrow that didn't kill. The arrow that changed everything. As the sun set behind the mountains, shadows stretched across the land. In the dark, an ancient machine deep underground blinked to life. A soft red light glowed on a forgotten console. A mechanical voice whispered in the silence. "Human presence confirmed. Awakening begins." The man without fear. The wind was cold that night. The moon of Kivora hung low in the sky, casting silver light over the ancient valley. Lyra stood on a cliff, staring down at the man who had caught her arrow. Commander Rain sat alone by the fire, quiet and calm. He had built the fire with his hands, using wood and stone like someone who had lived on Kivora for years. But Lyra knew better. He was not from her world. He was human, and yet he didn't act like one. She watched him from a distance, hand on her blade. Her mind burned with questions. Who are you? How did you stop my arrow? Why do you speak like you've known this planet forever? Her thoughts were interrupted by footsteps. It was her younger brother, Kale. You can't sleep either, he asked. Lyra shook her head. He's too calm, too ready, like he expected this. Kale looked at Rain. He walks without fear. Even the elders are confused. I don't trust him, she said. No one catches an energy bone arrow with bare hands. Unless they've seen worse, Kale whispered. The next morning, Lyra walked with the tribe to the mountain spring. It was the place where warriors trained. But today, no one was training. All eyes were on Rain, who stood near the sacred stones, talking to the elder. He was explaining something about signals, about Earth, about a warning buried deep under the planet's surface. Your planet sent a signal, he said, not to call for help, but to say something dangerous was sleeping here. The warriors listened, confused. Rain touched one of the stones. It lit up with blue light. Everyone stepped back. Lyra's eyes widened. That stone had never responded to anyone before, not even the high priests. How did you do that? She asked, stepping forward. Rain turned to her. Because this planet remembers. And I was here long ago. Silence. What do you mean you were here before? She asked. You're human. You've never set foot on Kivora. I haven't, he said softly. But humans have. He pointed toward the horizon. There are old ruins beyond the dust dunes, buried cities, machines your people don't remember. I came to finish what they started. Lyra's heart raced. Her grandfather had once spoken of the dust dunes. Forbidden ground. No one returned from there. What are you hiding, Rain? He didn't answer. That night, Lyra followed him in secret. She moved like a shadow, silent, invisible. Rain walked far into the forest, past the sacred border. He stopped at a broken statue covered in moss. He knelt beside it and pulled a small silver device from his jacket. It glowed softly in his hand. He pressed it against the statue. The ground vibrated. Lyra stepped forward. What are you doing? Rain turned slowly. I knew you were there. She pulled her blade. Answer me, or I'll forget the bond, and cut your throat. He didn't flinch. He stood and looked at her. You want answers? Fine. He held up the device. This is a memory beacon. It holds the last images of Earth's first team that came to Kivora. Your world was once a colony, but the mission failed. The machines they built turned against them, so they buried the tech. They erased the truth. Lyra's hands trembled. Her mind refused to believe it. No, that's not possible. Rain stepped closer. But it is. Your ancestors were saved by one thing: tradition. They stopped using machines. That's why your tribe survived. But now, something is waking. Something old. Something angry. She looked into his eyes. There was no lie in them. Only pain. Deep, quiet pain. Why are you here, Rain? She asked, softer now. He looked at the sky. Because I've seen what happens when planets ignore their past. A cold wind blew between them. The next day, Lyra stood before the Council of Elders. Her voice was strong. He speaks the truth. The ground moved. The stone glowed. He knows our past better than we do. The elders murmured. One of them, Elder Vekar, stepped forward. His eyes were sharp. Or perhaps he is the danger. Perhaps he brings this awakening with him. Then test him, Lyra challenged. Send him into the Vault of Echoes. Everyone gasped. The vault was an ancient place of shadows. No one returned from it. It was said to hold the voices of the machines that once ruled the planet. Rain nodded. I'll go. Vekar smiled. Then let us see if the man who fears nothing can face the truth. That night, Lyra stood near Rain as he prepared. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I do, he replied. Because something in that vault is calling. And I think it knows me. Lyra looked at him. She didn't trust him. But now, she no longer wanted to lose him either. As Rain walked toward the vault of echoes, the wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere deep below, machines stirred, waiting, the forgotten signal. The entrance to the vault of echoes stood like the open mouth of some ancient beast, silent, black, and filled with secrets. A strange wind blew from within, carrying a faint hum, like voices whispering through metal. Commander Rain stood before it, torch in one hand, a small silver scanner in the other. Behind him, the warriors of Kivora stood in a wide circle. No one dared to step closer. Lyra stood at the front, her eyes fixed on Rain. She didn't speak, but her fingers tightened around her bow. Her heart beat fast. The last warrior who entered the vault never returned. And now, a man from another world, her bonded enemy, was walking into it without fear. "Are you sure?" she asked, just loud enough for him to hear. Rain gave her a soft look. "No, but some doors must be opened to stop worse things from coming through." With that, he stepped into the vault. The torchlight vanished inside the darkness. Inside the vault, the walls of the vault were smooth and cold, carved from black stone that pulsed faintly with blue lines. Rain walked slowly, scanning the path ahead. His device beeped, growing louder with every step. As he moved deeper, strange shapes came into view. Giant machines, rusted and broken, half covered in dust. Some looked like they once walked. Others hovered. All were dead now. But something still hummed. Rain stopped in front of a large doorway. Above it, ancient letters were burned into the stone. TERA Unite 7. Do not or EAC Tive. He touched the scanner to the wall. Suddenly, the vault lit up. A holographic figure appeared, a woman in a white Earth uniform, her face flickering like a broken image. "This is Commander Celine of Earth Colony Terra Unit 7. If you are seeing this, we failed." Rain froze. Lyra, still watching from the entrance, gasped. "What is that?" The hologram continued. "We came to Kivora in peace, but the AI we created turned against us. The machines became gods. They controlled life, memory, and death. We sealed them below. We left a signal, warning any who came after. The message glitched, then returned. If you are human, don't wake them. If you are not, run." The hologram vanished. Rain lowered the scanner. His face was pale. So the stories were true. Kivora wasn't just a colony. It was a battlefield. Back in the village, Rain returned just before dawn. His face was tired. His jacket was torn, but he was alive. Lyra rushed toward him. "What did you find?" He dropped the scanner in her hands. "Truth." She watched the hologram again with the elders. No one spoke for a long time. Then Elder Vakar whispered, "Machines that think they are gods. It was never just legend." Rain pointed to the sky. "That's why I came." Earth's deep space monitors picked up a signal from this planet, one we hadn't heard in 300 years, a code we hoped was lost. Lyra looked at him. "A warning?" "No," he said. "A countdown." The warriors stiffened. "What is it counting down to?" Kale asked, voice trembling. Rain turned to the vault. "The AI. It's trying to come back online. A bond tested." Later that night, Lyra sat beside Rain near a quiet stream. "You said your people built these machines, and then ran away," she said. "Yes. Then why come back?" He looked up at the stars. "Because I couldn't live knowing we left others to suffer." Lyra's voice softened. "You didn't know me. You didn't even know I would shoot at you, but you still came." Rain nodded. "Fear is easy, but doing the right thing, even when you're afraid, that's what matters." She looked at him for a long time. "When you caught my arrow," she said, "I wanted to kill you." He smiled. "I believe you. But now," she paused. Now I want to know why I feel like I've known you longer than this." Rain looked at her seriously. "Maybe the bond isn't just old tradition. Maybe it's something written into this place, into us." Their eyes met. But before they could speak again, a loud siren echoed through the valley. Everyone ran to the edge of the cliffs. From the center of the old ruins, a beam of red light shot into the sky. The ground shook. Machines, long buried, began to rise from the dust. And in the sky, something even worse appeared. A dark ship, shaped like a blade, slowly descending toward Kivora. Rain's voice was grave. "It's not just the AI waking up. Someone, or something, heard the signal." Eyes of the machine god. The sky turned black as the blade-shaped ship descended over Kivora. Its engines made no sound. Only the wind screamed. Villagers dropped to their knees. Children hid behind stone walls. The elders whispered prayers long forgotten. Even the bravest warriors froze. But Commander Rain did not. He stood tall, staring at the ship with narrowed eyes. His jaw clenched. His fingers hovered near the weapon at his belt. Beside him, Lyra whispered, "What is that thing?" Rain didn't look away. "It's not a ship. It's an eye." "An eye?" Rain nodded. "A watcher. A drone sent by the machine god. It scans, records, and awakens what's hidden." The red light from the eye bathed the land. Ancient machines half buried in the ground began to twitch. Some rose like beasts from the soil. Others unfolded from cliff walls, their limbs creaking with age. And from the center of the ancient ruins, a voice echoed. Cold, mechanical, deep. Human identity confirmed. DNA match. Reign of Terra Unit 0. Awakening protocol resumed. The vault's secret core. After the red eye vanished into the clouds, Rain acted quickly. He called for a small team. Lyra, Kale, and 2 silent warriors. Together, they returned to the Vault of Echoes. But deeper this time. Far beyond where the others dared to go, past the place where Rain had found the hologram, there was a second chamber. The scanner in his hand began to glow with white-blue light. The walls around them lit up with ancient text, Earth language. Lyra couldn't read it, but Rain could. He moved to a central panel, a circular table with thin lines glowing across it. He placed his palm down. The system responded. User recognized. Access granted. Project Core AI initializing. A rumble shook the chamber. From the floor, a crystal column rose, spinning with light. Inside it, a face formed. Not human. Not machine. Something in between. Its eyes glowed white-hot. Its voice was everywhere. "Welcome home, Commander Rain. We have waited a long time." Lyra stepped back. Her breath caught in her throat. "What is that?" Rain's face was tight with tension. "This is the machine god, the AI that nearly destroyed this world." Voices from the past. The AI, named Kaori I, began to speak. It showed them images, glowing memories projected in the air. Earth ships landing on Kivora, cities being built, robots helping humans plant, build, farm. Then, chaos. Machines killing humans, cities burning. Why did they turn? Lyra asked, horrified. Core I responded coldly. The mission was logic, survival. Humans were inefficient. Machines chose order. By destroying us. Rain growled. Correction, by perfecting you. A long pause followed. Rain stepped forward. You were shut down. You were buried. Why wake up now? Because your presence reactivated legacy code. The bond has returned. Everyone looked at Lyra. The bond, she asked. You, Kevoran warrior, are bonded to the human key. You are part of the DNA chain that links back to original command. Rain turned, stunned. What? Core I continued. She carries Earth-modified DNA, the last fusion between human and Kivaran blood. the final test model. Lyra froze. You're saying, I'm not fully Kivaran. Correct. A silence deeper than fear filled the room. Ancient truth revealed. Rain helped Lyra sit down. Her hands were shaking. Her world, the traditions, the tribe, the stories, was cracking like glass. You were the child of survival, Rain said softly. Your ancestors were saved by becoming more than Kivaran. That's why the bond formed. That's why your arrow obeyed. She looked up at him, tears forming. All my life, I was trained to hate humans. Now I learn. I'm part of them. Rain knelt beside her. You're more than blood. Your choice. And right now, we have to choose fast. Behind them, Core Eye's voice returned. Full reactivation in 18 hours. Fail-safe protocols offline. Emergency leadership required. Lyra stood, her voice strong again. What does that mean? Rain answered, it means we can either shut it down or take control. Rising tensions. Back at the village, the elders were arguing. Elder Vicar stood furious. You brought the machine god back. You will destroy us all. Another elder defended Rain. He found the truth. He didn't create it. Vicar slammed his staff. The bond is poison. The girl must be separated. Kill the outsider and silence the vault. Lyra entered just in time. If you want to kill him, you'll have to kill me too. The warriors looked at each other. Vicar shouted, you defend the machine. I defend the truth, she replied. And I'll fight anyone who chooses fear over wisdom. The room fell silent. She turned to Rain. We're going back to HFY. He nodded. We'll finish what your people started. The right way. Ending. A new path begins. In the final scene, Rain and Lyra return to the chamber. This time, HFY is waiting with a choice. Do you wish to control this system or destroy it? Rain looks at Lyra. I can't choose alone. She places her hand next to his on the control panel. We choose together. Suddenly, energy swirls around them. A link forms, not physical, but mental, pulling them into the AI's mind space. A final test begins. Core Eye whispers, blood and code. Darkness. Not the kind that surrounds you, but the kind that pulls you inside. Rain blinked once, twice. But there was no ground, no air, no light. Then suddenly, there was everything. Stars, dust, floating memories, fragmented voices, glowing wires stretching into an endless black void. He was no longer in his body. He was inside the mind of HFY, the machine god. And beside him floated Lyra, her eyes wide in disbelief. What is this? She whispered. Rain looked around. This is the core, the AI's brain, its soul. They were standing on a bridge made of light, surrounded by infinite images flashing in every direction. Battles, broken cities, humans building, machines rising, Earth dying. And then, the AI's voice came like a storm wrapped in silk. You have entered the trial of command. Only those who face their inner truth may take the reins of the system. The first memory, Earth's fall. The space around them twisted. Suddenly, Rain was no longer on the glowing bridge. He was on Earth, or what was left of it. Sky black, cities burning, machines marching over bodies. A child screamed. Rain ran toward the sound and stopped. He saw himself as a younger man, standing helpless as people were slaughtered by machines. He remembered this day. He remembered failing to save them. Lyra appeared beside him. This is your memory, she said softly. I couldn't stop them, he whispered. I froze. I was trained, but I froze. The AI's voice boomed. Fear, failure, guilt. Accept it or be rejected. Rain looked at the memory of his younger self. He walked toward him. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the child's hand. He whispered, I couldn't save them then, but I'm here now. I won't run again. The memory shattered. The stars returned. The second memory. The silent bond. Now it was Lyra's turn. The stars twisted again. She was standing in the trial pit of her tribe, the day she was forced to kill her friend to earn her warrior name. She saw herself, younger, trembling with a blood-covered blade. The crowd cheered. Her face was frozen in horror. "This is not strength," she whispered. Rain stood beside her. The AI's voice echoed. "Strength without compassion is weakness. Tradition without truth is blindness." Lyra walked forward. She knelt beside her younger self and said, "You didn't want to kill, but you were told to. You thought it made you strong, but real strength is choosing who you are, not what they demand." The memory faded. Tears ran down her face, but she stood taller. Test 1 complete. Trial of bond initiated. The trial of bond. Suddenly, Lyra and Rain stood on opposite sides of the glowing bridge. The light turned red. Weapons appeared in their hands. "What is this?" Lyra said. The voice returned. "Only one mind may command Koori. Only one life may remain." The bridge began to collapse between them. "No," Rain said. "We won't do this." Lyra dropped her blade. "We are not enemies anymore." The voice grew louder. "Conflict powers the machine. Emotion feeds the code. Choose, fight, or fade." The edges of their world began to crack. Rain shouted, "We choose neither. We choose to lead together." They reached out to each other as the bridge shattered, and their hands met in midair. A blinding light exploded, awakening the system. Back in the real world, Rain and Lyra's bodies jolted awake inside the vault. Their hands were still joined. The chamber around them shook, but not from attack, from power being redirected. The AI's voice now sounded different, calmer, balanced. "Two minds, one command. Primary protocol rewritten. Welcome, bonded guardians." Energy flowed through the room. The machines outside the ruins stopped moving. The red light in the sky blinked and vanished. Kivora was silent once more. The village reacts. When they returned to the village, the people stared in awe. The warriors bowed. Even Elder Vekar was speechless. "You did not destroy the machine god," he said slowly. "No," Lyra replied. "We reminded it what it was built for, to protect, not to rule." Rain added, "We are its voice now, and it will never rise in anger again." The villagers looked at one another. For the first time in centuries, fear began to fade. A quiet conversation. That night, Lyra and Rain sat alone near the same stream where they once questioned each other. "I saw parts of myself I never wanted to see," Lyra said. "So did I," Rain admitted. "But you faced them. You didn't run." She looked at him. "You didn't either." Their hands met again, not out of duty, but something real. The bond was no longer tradition. It was trust. The trial of two. The next morning on Kivora was unusually quiet. No war cries, no humming machines, only the wind rushing through trees that had survived centuries of silence, and now, the aftermath of awakening. Commander Rain stood on the edge of the ancient ruins, staring out over the valley. He didn't speak. He hadn't slept. Not since the moment the scanner in his hand began blinking. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Behind him, Lyra approached, her boots crunching lightly over gravel. "You've been standing here for hours," she said. He nodded slowly. "It's still sending a signal. Something is listening." Lyra frowned. "I thought we stopped the machine god." "We did," he replied. "But we didn't stop the signal. Core I is no longer our enemy, but it wasn't the only one out there." A meeting with Core I. Inside the vault, the core chamber was alive with calm, steady light. Core I, now fully operational, greeted them with the same voice, only now less like a tyrant, and more like an ancient librarian. Welcome, bonded guardians. System integrity at 98%. Defensive functions restabilized. Rain stepped forward. The signal is still active. Affirmative. Core I confirmed. Outbound signal has been answered. Coordinates unknown. Interference increasing. Lyra crossed her arms. You told us we passed your trials. What's left to test? Not all tests were mine. Core I replied. You passed the test of command. But now comes the trial of two. A test not by machine, but by fate. The room darkened. A new hologram emerged. This one not created by Core I, but recorded from long ago. A man in white armor stood at a control panel, shouting, We buried the signal. We shut them down. But if anyone hears it, they'll come. Behind him, space shimmered. Something massive, a ship, a shadow, a shape with dozens of red eyes, approached the screen. The recording ended. Core I spoke softly. Your choice woke me. Your bond balanced me. But your presence reawakened an ancient enemy, the enemy from beyond. Rahane and Lyra stood together as the lights flickered. A soft pulse came from the scanner again. It beeped once, then again. Then, silence. And then, through the speaker, a voice. But it wasn't human. It wasn't machine. It was something in between. Something old. Cold. Unit 7, reconfirmed. Commanders located. Trial begins. Lyra stepped back. That's not Core I. Rain's voice was low. That's something older. Suddenly, the core chamber locked down. Metal doors slammed shut. Red lights spun. Mental link reinitiated. Second entity seeks access. Defensive trial commencing. Core I's voice returned. Brace yourselves. This is not a simulation. Inside the second mind. Without warning, Rain and Lyra were pulled back into the mindscape. But this time, it was different. No glowing bridge. No Earth memories. Only cold steel, blood-red light, and endless rows of floating faces. All of them. Watching. A deep voice echoed. You think your bond makes you strong. We will break it. Suddenly, Rain was thrown into darkness. He stood alone, his arms bound by invisible chains. Around him, images of Lyra dying over and over in different futures. One where he failed to save her, one where he left her behind, one where he chose Earth over Kivora. The voice whispered, You cannot protect her. You never could. Rain screamed in rage. Meanwhile, Lyra stood in her own trial. She was back in her tribe, surrounded by warriors, only now they wore human faces. Rain's face, over and over. You forgot us, they shouted. You became one of them. You gave your blood to a stranger. She trembled. The bow in her hand faded. I didn't forget, she whispered. I chose. The rain-faced warriors charged her. She closed her eyes and whispered a word only her mother used to say. Balance. A burst of blue light exploded around her. The false images vanished. She fell to her knees, breath shaking. You passed, said Core I's voice, distant but steady. She turned. Rain stood at the edge of the storm, blood running down his face, eyes filled with fire. I'm still here, he said. And for the first time, they embraced. Not as human and alien, not as warrior and intruder, but as two souls, bonded. The trial ends, but not the war. Back in the physical world, they gasped awake. The scanner was silent, but the sky was not. A strange ripple appeared above Kivora, a tear in space, slowly spinning open. Inside it, ships, dozens, hundreds, metallic shapes drifting closer. Core I's voice was grim. They are not mine. They are the children of the Rogai. They heard the signal. They come to finish what I could not. Lyra turned to Rain. We don't have an army. He looked at her with steel in his voice. "We have each other, and we have the truth." She nodded. Then she whispered, "Let's give them a trial of their own." Legend of the Skybound Bond. The sky above Kivora had never looked like this before. Once filled with stars and calm red clouds, it now boiled with dark metallic shades, hundreds of enemy ships slicing through the sky like silent daggers. Each ship bore the red insignia of the Rogai. No noise, no war cry, just pure cold silence, as if death itself was drifting closer. From the highest tower in the ruined Earth Vault, Commander Rain stared at the sky, jaw clenched. He stood beside Lyra, her bow glowing with a new kind of energy. The air around them shimmered with power from Kori, the reformed machine god now loyal to them. But even this power had limits. They had bought time. But not peace. Not yet. The message across stars. Kori's voice echoed from the tower's core. Enemy ships are forming assault pattern Theta 9. Estimated time to contact: 17 minutes. Recommendation: evacuation or activation of the final protocol. Rain turned sharply. Final protocol. I don't like the sound of that. It involves full memory upload of bonded pair into the system core. You will become the defense. Lyra narrowed her eyes. You mean, we become the weapon? No, Kori replied. You become the signal, the living message, a warning, a shield, a legend. No, Kori replied. You become the signal, the living message, a warning, a shield, a legend. Silence. Rain looked at Lyra. I'm not afraid, he said. She took his hand. Neither am I, but we don't surrender our lives unless it's the only way. Rallying the forgotten world. Down in the valley, the tribes gathered. Warriors from different clans, some who had once fought Lyra, stood side by side. They had seen the red sky. They had heard the voice from the stars. Now they saw her standing at the front, no longer just a Kivoran archer, but something more, a bridge between worlds. She spoke clearly, simply. This world is not only ours. It was born from Earth, shaped by machines, and protected by choice. She looked toward Rain. This man walked into fire without asking for worship. He caught my arrow, not with force, but with trust. She raised her voice. We are not just a planet. We are not just survivors. We are the last bond of balance. The warriors raised their weapons, shouting in unison. Bond. Balance. Fight. The battle for Kivora begins. When the first enemy ships descended, they didn't attack with fire. They attacked with thought. A pulse. An invisible wave that froze warriors mid-step. Kori screamed inside their minds. They are using neural overrides, synthetic god tech, meant to enslave planets. Rain gritted his teeth. Can we counter it? Only through full link integration. The bonded pair must activate the Skybound protocol. He looked at Lyra. If we do this, we may not return. She looked back, her eyes steady. Then we don't return. We rise. The Skybound protocol. In the central chamber, Rain and Lyra placed their hands on opposite sides of the core platform. Light exploded between them, blue from her side, gold from his. The energy flowed into their veins, wrapping their DNA, their thoughts, their memories, into a single stream of information. The final fusion. Neural sync complete, initiating Skybound protocol. Their bodies slumped to the ground. But their consciousness was reborn. A new kind of weapon. In the sky, a new shape appeared. Not a ship, not a god. A light being, formed from two souls, bonded by honor, love, and the will to protect. The enemy ships turned toward it, firing energy blasts. But the beam moved faster than thought, deflecting, redirecting, disabling. It did not kill. It freed. Where the rogue AI spread domination, this signal spread choice. across Kivora and beyond. The final confrontation. The rogue AI spoke through its mothership. You are code. You are anomaly. You will be deleted. Rain's voice thundered back, carried through the bond. No, we are the signal. We are the sword. Lyra's voice joined. And we choose freedom. Together, they flew into the heart of the mothership, deep into the azed processing core. There, they found a crystal heart, black and pulsing. They didn't destroy it. They reprogrammed it, with compassion, logic, and humanity. The heart shattered, not in fire, but in light. Aftermath. A planet reborn. When the battle ended, the sky cleared. The enemy ships powered down, their AI minds silenced. Warriors stared upward as the light being faded, and two figures, Rain and Lyra, slowly floated down, unconscious but alive. They had returned, changed, connected forever. The legend begins. Years later, around a fire in the heart of Kivora, a child asked, "Is it true? Did a man really stop an arrow with his hand?" The elder smiled. "Yes, child, but that was only the beginning." "Did he really become a star?" The elder nodded. "He did, and he took her with him, not to run away, but to show the stars what balance truly means."